Hi, this is Dan Bullard, retired electronics engineer, sitting on the front deck of my houseboat again. It was snowing this morning. We're near the end of February too. I want to talk about a couple of things, as usual. In the real world, I've done a lot of things in my work, but at home you have to do stuff too sometimes. And years ago, this is back in 2002, 2003, I was working for Next Test. Oh man, they gave me a hell of a good raise. So I had money just burning a hole in my pocket. I had Darkwater Keep, I had the Aloha House, but the kids were growing up and it was time to start getting ready to get out of the house and, figure out where we're going to live. And I decided we were going to buy a boat for my wife. And so I bought her the Arcalis, and here's a picture of her with the Arcalis in Astoria. So April drove the Arcalis to Astoria. She single-handed it. So really brave to put a woman in a boat and let her go across this huge expanse of water to Astoria, and she did it. She did just fine. We had a great time in Astoria, but the Arcalis was prone to getting moisture in it because it didn't have a heater that would work without running the engine. If you wanted heat, you had to run the engine. So we got a little Mr. Heater and we started running it in the boat. The problem is when you burn propane in a heater, it exhibits two things. It gives off CO2 and it puts out water vapor. Because there's a lot of hydrogen in propane, the hydrogen combines with oxygen, makes water. So we would get all this water vapor in the boat. And, we try to keep it to a minimum, but sometimes it got pretty bad. So, I decided to get a little dehumidifier. They make these little 12-volt dehumidifiers with a little 12-volt muffin fan in them and a Peltier device that would get hot on one side and cold on the other. So, plugged into 12 volts, the fan would run, the Peltier device would come on, and on the cold side, it would accumulate moisture, and the moisture would drip off into a collection pan, and it would then go back around to the hot side, cool down the hot side, and give you dehumidified air. That's what it did. So it would suck out the moisture, and so we put this in the Arcalis, and it worked great. It sucked the moisture right out of the air. The problem is, when it gets cold, that thing becomes a problem because the moisture doesn't just get cold, it gets frozen. So it gets in the 40s, the cold side goes below freezing, and the moisture condenses on it, freezes, and then you get this block of ice growing out of the thing. So I had to come up with a solution. And the solution I came up with was pretty cool. I went to Radio Shack, back when Radio Shack was still around, but you can go to DigiKey and I'll give you the parts list. I got an opto sensor, which was a photo Darlington, and a little infrared LED. And what I did was I put the infrared LED on one side of the cooling fins on the dehumidifier and the photo Darlington on the other side, and the infrared light would shine right through and turn that switch on. And so that photo-transistor, that photo Darlington, would flip a relay, double pole, double throw in switch terms. So that would enable the power to the Peltier device so it would get cold on the side where it would normally get cold on and hot on the other side. But if the ice built up on that cooling fin, the ice would grow and it would block the infrared LED from being seen by the photo Darlington. So that would turn off the light to the photo Darlington. And what it would do is it would change states. And that would flip the double pole, double throw relay, the Form C relay. It would flip that double pole, double throw relay. That would flip the polarity on the Peltier device. Now when you flip the polarity on a Peltier device, what happens is what was the cold side now gets to be the hot side. What was the hot side now gets to be the cold side. So the cold side turns hot And guess what it does? It melts the ice. So it melted the ice melted off, and then by the time it melted completely, the infrared light would make it to the photo-Darlington again. It would flip the switch back to the way it was, and the cold side would get cold again and accumulate moisture. So it worked great. It worked great. So we would leave this thing in the Arakalis all the time. And we rigged it up so it would drain the moisture into the sink of the Arakalis, which would go out. And so it wouldn't matter how cold it got, the photo-Darlington and the LED would make sure that that Form C relay, that double pole, double throw relay, would flip, and it would melt the ice if any ice formed. So it was the ice blocking the infrared LED from getting to the photo-Darlington. And I don't even have to give you a schematic. You can figure it out. It's crazy. It was really cool. And so that boat, when we sold that boat, the cushions were crisp, everything was dry, there was no moisture anywhere. Okay, one more thing. If you're interviewing, you're looking for a job, you're interviewing. Imagine, the person that would be the worst person to interview with. When I was working at Credence, I worked for a guy named Steve Nurse. He was terrible. Then I got a new boss named Stephanie, and I've mentioned Stephanie a few times. She was terrible. I couldn't get her to make me stop traveling. And so I went looking for another job, and I got a headhunter to find me another job. The job came up at Synopsys, a company called Synopsys, and they did logic and analog synthesis. And it was really interesting. So I went and interviewed with this guy in the Bay Area. We had a good conversation. He says, "Do you know who I am?" And I said, you're Ted Hoff. I don't know. You're the guy who interviewed me for the job at Synopsys. He says, "I just happen to be the guy who owns the patent for the microprocessor." He has the patent for the microprocessor. He worked for Intel when they developed the microprocessor. And talk about overwhelmed. I'm interviewing with a guy who's the inventor of the microprocessor. And it came down to two people, and they chose the other guy, not me, but could have been me working for Ted Hoff. I'm really glad it didn't happen. I would have been just overwhelmed. I would have been so intimidated. The way it was, I was easily intimidating other people. I intimidate a lot of people, believe me. Just talk to some of the people who watch my videos. Anyway, so don't be intimidated by people when you're interviewing. When you're interviewing, just treat them like normal people. And just imagine, it could be Ted Hoff. You don't know. It could be some guy who invented, it could be Gordon Moore. You don't know. It could be the guy who invented the transistor. It could be the guy who invented the microprocessor. It could be the guy who invented the Raptor engine. You don't know. So just treat them like regular folks, okay? I got really close to getting that job, and I wasn't up to speed on math. That's what he was worried about. So get good at math, too. You got to be good at math. And learn the FFT. For Christ's sake, learn the FFT. So once again, from the rear of this Dan Bullard, see ya.